Thank you for joining us for today's Lunch and Learn Budgeting 201. I'm Greg Berry, Assistant Director in the UAB Office of Alumni Affairs. Just a quick note, since we're virtual, don't be surprised if things may seem out of place or a technical issue pops up. If you experience any issues with your video or audio, please click the reconnect button at the top of your screen. This will get you back to the webinar right away. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be uploaded onto our website tomorrow. If you have any questions throughout the afternoon, please place them in the chat room. We'll have time for a Q&A at the end of the presentation. Today's session is part of our ongoing Backpacks to Briefcases Evergreen program. This series has 4 events each year, 2 in the spring, 2 in the fall. Topics will focus on financial planning, personal branding, workplace skills, and personal life. Between each of those primary events, there will be chances to take advantage of golden electives like a lunch and learn, like we're doing today. These events will also include networking and volunteer opportunities. To receive your Evergreen certificate and your Evergreen lapel pin, you must complete all 4 green events and 2 golden electives. These don't have to happen during the same calendar year. Just jump on in, join us when you can. Young alumni and students are welcome to participate. You can get more information online at alumni.uab.edu/backpacks. At the end of today's Lunch and Learn, I will highlight other upcoming opportunities for the Evergreen Certificate Program. Today, we welcome Gina Cannady, Assistant Vice President of Training and Community Involvement at Legacy Community Federal Credit Union here in Birmingham. Gina is a certified credit union financial counselor and chair for the Legacy for Good Foundation. At this time, I would like to turn things over to Gina and officially welcome her to today's webinar. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me, Greg.
You're so welcome. And we'll get those slides up here just momentarily. There you go. And the platform is yours. Looking forward to it.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for having me back for Budgeting 201. We were able to do some Budgeting 101 classes in March. And this is just the next step on a financial wellness journey. So I just hit the wrong button. I apologize. There we go. So just for a recap of what we did in the previous one, hopefully you were able, if you attended, to start tracking your monthly budget or your monthly expenses and seeing what's going on in your life, because everyone has that unique life experience. And then also put pen to paper and getting some type of budget down and determining what method you have. Was it the envelope method? Was it the jar? Google Sheets is extremely popular. A budgeting app like Mint, or was there something like a spreadsheet or a good old check register for you? And we talked about weighing your income versus your expenses. The easiest one is to figure out what income you have coming in. The hardest thing is to determine what are the expenses you have going out, because there does need to be a balance between those things. And then looking for the leaks, those small things that add up, those unwritten expenses, such as, were you able to look at your cell phone bill and see if you have some of those strange different bills like call forwarding? Do you use that? Or did you look at your auto insurance and your homeowner's insurance and make sure you have the appropriate coverage there? You want to pay for what you need, but you don't want to overpay for things that you don't. And also thinking of, were there places where you had subscriptions you don't use? Do you thoroughly use your cable package if you have that, or streaming services? Were you able to identify those leaks? Because the thing we want to do is keep a smart budget. And remember, SMART is being very specific, measurable, adjustable, realistic, and time-oriented. You want to make sure that your budget remains a living thing, that it does see your lifestyle and adjust as needed. So that's just a recap from our last session in Budgeting 101. But now that we've gotten some of this knowledge, you've got to put it into place. So what I have done here is I have gone and looked at some of the common things you might look for when you go shopping for groceries. And hasn't groceries just skyrocketed lately? So we want to do a comparison, and this is some things, and it looks like I did not save my Publix expenses, but looking for things to see, do I need to go to a Target, a Walmart, a Dollar Tree, which is now $1.25 Tree? Do I go for name brand? Do I go for generic? Is there something more valuable in taste? Is it nutritional value? What am I looking for? And this is a great way to look at some things. Now, I'm not saying, hey, let's go and to go to all these different places and look things up and write them down, because that's going to waste gas, and that has skyrocketed as well. You can do a lot of your research online. Since almost everybody has some type of delivery service or pickup service, you can find these different items, and the items are going to be specific to your life, and see where's the best deal for you. So we have that, and make sure that you are looking for them, because we expect that your grocery bills are going to go up in the current economic state. Another one we saw was looking at your cable versus your streaming services. What better fits you? And here are some of the common ones that you can do, and you'll see that a base price for a cable bundle is $132. You have different streaming services that are much less than that, but there are some new changes. Everything on the streaming services, on every paid one, has gone up within the last 6 months. So that is something you want to make sure that we're not combining too many of these services that now exceeds what we would get in cable. But what is great is there are some free services. These are the paid ones, but there's some free ones such as Tubi and Crackle, Pluto, which is one that I do quite often. There is a free platform on Peacock, IMDb. There are different types of platforms that you can get for free. It's just according to what you need from them. So you would look at that and make sure, once again, let's compare and let's compete with them. As in anything, even your streaming services and your cable services will compete with each other if you're able to show them that I'm getting something better somewhere else. Great way is just to start with a diagram and put it down of what you would need. But also realize that all of these have something else involved. So when it comes to cable, obviously you're going to need that cable box, and there'll be an extra charge. But most of your streaming services require some type of smart device and access to your Wi-Fi. So right there, you have extra cost involved. Are you able to put these together? We know we can't share passwords as easily with Netflix as before. So does that increase the cost per person or per household? You want to be able to examine that, because our entertainment expenses will also continue to rise. So the first one is the self-check, and any questions that might have come up from the first session. Did you run into any type of problems? You can put those in the chat. Or did you have any issues that you just didn't seem to be able to overcome? That might be something you put in the chat, or you message me individually if you want to speak on our private one, private matters. If you were able to stick to a budget, if you were, great, but if you're not, let's talk about it. Where were the sticking points? And let's overcome. And did you set your goals? Did anyone set goals this last time so you can progress towards it? Because goal-based budgeting, saving, and debt reduction, if you have that in writing somewhere, electronic or good old pen and paper, then you will achieve those goals faster. So just kind of always think of those things, and always know that I am a resource, that if you had that type of question or issue, you get to me through my email at any time. There we go. So now you've created a budget. We talked about that for the first time. We're going to have to work on savings. And to save, first we have to ditch the debt. That's so easy for me to say, isn't it? Let's just ditch the debt and prepare for the future. But there are some ways that we can get it done in an effective manner. Excuse me. The first thing is to recognize that not all debt is bad. There is what's called your debt tolerance. When you come to incurring debt, a good debt would be something that enhances your life, that creates extra income streams. So some of those would be your mortgage. Your mortgage is the best way when you think of it. Every time you pay your mortgage, you're increasing your escrow. Therefore, you have a bricks and mortar savings account. So that would be a good debt. Also, and I know this seems very strange to say, but student loans, although we hate that student loans get so high, they're actually one of those good debts because it's increasing your knowledge and therefore your earning potential. So that would be a good debt. Now, bad debts are going to be those that do not enhance your life. It's also going to be those that by the time you have it paid off, you have to say, do I even still have this item that I put myself into debt? Now, there are some things that bridge these two. Your auto loans are a perfect example. Is it a good debt? You have to have some way to get to work, to earn the income, to make the budget work, to ditch the debt. So that would be a good debt. But what type of vehicle is it? You know, in the U.S., we have an average used car loan of $25,000 or more. And the average auto loan is 60 months. However, as a commonality in the U.S., we trade in those cars every 26 months. So what happens to that other 36 months of debt? It becomes negative equity that has to be paid off or rolled in to the next auto loan. That negative equity that we roll in, which is very common, into the next auto loan takes that from a good debt to a bad debt. Because now we are 1, 2, 3 cars from that first debt and we're still paying on it. But we don't have that anymore. And then, of course, things like when you're using your credit cards are not necessarily bad if they're used wisely. Once again, do you still have the item that you're paying for? Sometimes that can be a necessity. Extraordinary medical bills would be something you might incur a credit card debt for. That makes it a good debt because it improved your life. But using that to go out to eat all the time and running up that instead of saving and making that part of your events life that we talked about in Budgeting 101, that makes the bad type of debt. So then we also have what is the thing that we really hate most of all is payday loans and title loans. Those are bad debts. They're a bad deal for everyone. The interest rates are extraordinarily high. The likelihood of paying them off is low. There is a case study in Great Britain where they had a payday loan that went over 20 years, and when they compounded the interest, it was over 5,800%. That is a bad debt. So then we have to see about what is your debt tolerance. Now, there are the Dave Ramsey purists that will say no debt. And that's great if that's the way you want to handle your finances. Finance is personal. There are others that will say, hey, the debts I want to incur are for my home and a reasonable automobile that has great gas mileage. And that would be another way to have a good debt. There are some that say, you know, your financial institutions say that if I want to get a great line of credit, a great loan, I could have no more than 40% debt to income. That's my debt tolerance. None of these are incorrect. They're all based on the individual. So in the end, do you need it? Can you pay for it? And then what type of emotional toll does it take on you? So emotional debts are those that are not talked about. We're not talking about, oh, this is an auto loan, or this is a mortgage, or this is a credit card. An emotional debt is something that doesn't allow you to sleep well at night. These are usually something that has a personal consequence in it. It's a loan often by a friend or family member. They begin to prey on your mind. They don't allow you to sleep well. So even though these may be smaller or even without an interest rate because they are more of friends or family, the emotional toll on your mental well-being far outstrips paying off something else first. So the emotional debts are often those that we need to address first. But there are different methods for ditching your debt. Number one, the Snowball Method, absolutely Dave Ramsey here. This is what he espouses, and that is, let's get all of our debts in order by balance. We're going to pay the minimums on everything but the smallest amount. And on that small amount, we're going to throw everything at it. We're going to throw you've got extra $5, we throw it out. So we can pay it off. And then we move on to the next lowest debt. Minimum on everything but that one. And then we put the second loan plus what we were paying on the one we just paid off together. And slowly but surely, these things add up and we pay off everything on the list. But there's also another method that Gail Oxlade endorses, which is the avalanche method. And that is, we list our debts in order of interest rate. And we want to start with the highest interest rate and go down. Now, the principles remain the same. You pay the minimums on everything but that highest interest rate, and you throw everything you can at it. And then once it's paid off, you move to the next highest interest rate. And you do that so over time you are paying less on your debts. It's however you feel that emotional comfort when it comes to combating your debt. And what you'll see, there is a link here that I can also send out that has some more information on the avalanche versus the snowball method of eradicating your debt. And then there's this great thing, and this is definitely something I'm going to send out, which is the link for the debt reduction calculator that allows you to put everything in there in the different methods. And you'll see what you need to pay and how long it's going to take for you to pay it off and which one fits your lifestyle first. Because remember, part of a smart budget is being realistic about what we do. What gives you comfort? That emotional well-being when ditching your debt. So this is a great interactive way, especially if you're already doing your budget on Google Sheets. You can have a lot of this information simply transferred over, and the link is there, and it will also be sent out to you. So which method is best for you? There's no right or wrong. The best answer I can give you is, if you have debt, we need to start paying on it in some way. So snowball, avalanche. Do you do it by balance or do you do it by interest rate? But then you also have this mixed. And the mixed is, I have an emotional debt that I need to pay off first. And then I move on. And that is perfectly okay. It may not be the largest balance or the smallest balance, or the highest interest rate, but it has the biggest impact on your mental well-being. So start with that and then move on to one of the methods that works for you. So when we're talking about making sure that we're preparing. We've got to ditch the debt, but we've also got to prepare for the future. And how do we do that? And there are many different ways to do it. And it's according to what your risk tolerance is on this. So first thing we're going to talk about is sticking to your budget, making sure you're on track with your debt. And then, do you have categories of savings, of emergency savings and sinking funds? So, and sinking funds may be a term that you have not heard before because it's not as commonly used as emergency funds. Emergency funds are just for that. They are for emergencies. They are not for what you want to plan for. Emergencies, by definitions, are unplanned. So you can prepare, but you do not plan to have them. Now, you can save a specific amount. One of the things you want to get to is between 3, 6, and I would even argue, if you can, up to 12 months of your expenses saved. And you're going to start small, step by step. So you want to do that. And we want to make sure that if, oh my goodness, another pandemic hits like the last one and everyone has either reduced hours or no hours, we can still make the bills, the essential things in life that we need to pay off. Now, sinking funds are different. Sinking funds are things that you plan for. They're the smaller expenses, but there's something that don't go into the day-to-day budget. We're not talking about how you pay for your child's daily lunches at school as part of your budget, but you are planning something such as birthdays, holidays, a big one, property taxes. I just got my property tax about 2 weeks ago for 2020, letting me know that in October it will be due, and I have until December to actually get it done. So that is something that I can start saving for with my sinking funds to make sure it's paid on time. And the term sinking funds means basically I sink that debt and want to be able to do that. Car tax, we know they happen every year. So we want to make sure we have that element, that very specific element of savings in there. So, and there's another link you can see at the bottom that will talk more about emergency funds. When it comes to your investments, you want to make sure that you are preparing for the future in a way that makes sense for you, in the now and the then. So there are multiple types, and I am not going to get into a huge investment conversation today. We just don't have that much time, and that can be an entire session on its own. But there are some things that we need to think about when making these decisions. First, if you're talking about anything within the market, making sure you understand the market. There have been some fluctuations lately, not only over the last few weeks, but on the last few months, that we have seen things go up and down, up and down. We want to be very responsive to that. Making sure that you diversify. And I know this is what you probably hear all the time, is make sure you have diversity within your investment portfolio or whatever type of savings methods you have. You do want to make sure, and that's because the market and the Federal Reserve reacts differently to different products. Also, what is your risk tolerance? So the higher risk you take, the greater potential for reward, but also the greater potential for loss. You want to make sure that you know what your risk tolerance is. So just to make sure that it fits, it's logical for you. So one of the things that I talk about a lot is to start small with something like a certificate of deposit, especially if you're still learning about the different types of investment possibilities and savings methods. Now, a certificate of deposit is a government-sponsored item, and that means that you put your funds into a certificate which is locked down for the term or a specific amount of time, and you get a specific locked-in rate of return. Right now, they are not very high. We do see that I predict that they will go a little higher because of some predicted moves from the Federal Reserve. So you may see those increase. Now, often you will see that the more money you put in, the higher rate of return you get. That will depend on your financial institution. Where I work, that is not the case. It all starts at the same beginning balance of at only $500 or more, but it will depend on that financial institution. One of the reasons that they are so attractive is that they are more of a safe investment. You don't get the highest return, but the risk is usually the penalty for early withdrawal in the term of interest, unless there are some extraordinary circumstances. So say you had a 12-month CD, and at 9 months that you had to access those funds, you would typically have to sacrifice just the interest or even a portion of the interest that is earned, but that initial investment would be safe. Now, there are extraordinary circumstances, which are usually involve opening it and then within a matter of just a few days, closing it. You might sacrifice some of the principal, but that is not common when it comes to certificates of deposit. This is a great way to start wealth building, to start that savings, because most of them do start low and they start with terms, although they are locked down. For some are as low as 90 days. So at the end of 90 days, you can reassess. You know, that adjustable part of your budget, of the SMART budget. So those are certificates of deposit, or CDs. And this is just different types of CDs. You'll be able to see. What you want to do is do your research on them. Financial institutions are like any other business. We compete. If you find another term that is better, has a higher rate of return than your financial institution, take that quote to them and see if they will compete and get you a better return on your money. Make your money work for you. And then you have IRAs. Now, IRAs are an entire beast on themselves. So this is just sort of a very high level review of them. IRAs are your individual retirement accounts. And once again, they are government sponsored. And this is to encourage savings for the future. There are two kinds of IRAs, and they are all going to depend on taxation. A traditional is what's called the tax deferred, which means I have made a contribution to my IRA for tax year 2022. Therefore, for my taxes, my tax burden is going to be reduced somewhat. The opposite is true for your Roth. The Roth is I contribute to my IRA within tax year 2022. I do not get the tax deduction in that year. I get it when I access it. So your traditional, you get a tax deduction now. You will pay taxes when you access the funds at 59.5 or above. For your Roth, you don't get the tax deduction now, but when you take your distributions at 59.5 or above, you do not have that taxation. So it's not that you can have no taxes on them. It's just when do you pay them. So you can access these at 59.5 without penalty. You have to start taking distributions from your traditional at 70.5. There is no upper cap for the Roth. Once again, the taxes have already been collected on those. Now, for early distributions, there will be penalties applied, and those are IRS penalties of 10% of whatever that distribution was. Also know that your early withdrawal distribution will also be considered taxable income, so be prepared for that when you see that on the next tax year. There are certain exceptions to that. qualified college expenses, please check for that current year's college expenses, what they are considered to be non-penalized. If there's some type of disability, your first-time home buyer can access some of those funds. I would once again try every other way to make your down payments with that, but you do have that resource. Or extraordinary medical expenses. And once again, please check if you're going to access that for your medical expenses of what is the definition for that year's extraordinary medical expenses. You want to make sure that you're not going to be hit with that 10% IRS penalty. Also, you can put up to $6,000 for tax year 2022. If you're under the age of 50, you can have up to $7,000 if you are between 50 and 59 in tax year 2022 for that tax deduction or that tax benefit on there. I will say that a lot of people do a combination between traditional and Roth. If you have, and I'm getting ahead of myself, let me do the next one. No, I'm not. Sorry, I messed up there because I got ahead of myself to the 401k options. I apologize. So if you have your 401k, you can also have those same types, your traditional or your Roth. And these are going to be the retirements that are usually offered by an employer. They have taken the place of most pensions, which you might have heard your parents and grandparents talk about having a pension. Most places have now replaced them with 401ks, or it might be a 403b. So you make contributions to your fund. Your employer may match some of those contributions. It is a good thing to note here is that if your employer matches those contributions, they will match them in the traditional IRA format that you will then have those taxes when you access your funds on them. So most places say that you have to be vested. Each employer has a different vested time. A very common one is 5 years to be invested. I have seen it in many places shrink to as little as 3 years, but you will have to be invested to take the employer matches with you to a full extent. You will always have everything you have put in and earned on your own will be yours. Now, what happens if you get a new job and you want to go somewhere else? Do you just lose that 401k or 403b? Absolutely not. You will get that into a rollover. So that rollover is usually an IRA or another investment, retirement investment account. So it will go with you. The only thing is there are time constraints when it comes to your 401k or your 403b that you want to be aware of. Please contact a investment professional that you will make sure that you are doing those within the time frame and in the proper investment accounts. So that would be your investment. Now, this shows different types of being vested. This is the most typical, which is a 5-year investing, and it says, okay, what happens if you leave after 3 years? Well, after 3 years, you are 60% invested, and therefore, whatever your employer has invested for you or matched, you will take 60% of that. Now, one thing that has been updated recently, it says that you should contribute between 10 to 15% of your income for your retirement. That I am now seeing other financial counselors and advisors say we need to get people to be up to 20%. And that is a lot to say a 20% I need to put away when you're really counting on that to make these budgets that we've been talking about work. One of the great things about most traditional 401ks and 403bs is they do have the ability to do an automatic stair step up. So if you want to hit 20%, but you started at say 5%, you can say on the first of the next year or any my employment anniversary year to increase it by 1% or by a dollar amount, either one, so that you're automatically saving a little more and more, but you do not have to really go in there and change something every year. That, once again, is a completely individual decision, but if you can start slowly automatically saving for your retirement, you will save more. And a great graph, I've seen this one and I love this one. It shows the impact of starting early and compound interest. So, and we have them, and they named them. I didn't name them, but Constant Chloe, she saves $10,000 a year. That's going to be more than likely for those automatic 401k. She saves into that investment portfolio, and she ends up with a huge amount. This is like 1.8 million at the end of it, and we're going to put it in an automatic fortune where you're not thinking about it. It just automatically comes out of your paycheck. Greatest way to save in the world. We have Quincy. Now, Quincy only saved for 10 years, from 25 to 35, but he started young. And then he stopped in the investments. But he was able to save almost $1 million. But he only actually actively did it for 10 years, starting young. The power of compound interest and time. Lila, she saved for 30 years, but she started 10 years later. So she's not going to get that much, but she did put it in the investment portfolio. When it comes to Noah, poor Noah, he was a little scared of investments. So he put it in just traditional savings account. Now he saved for 40 years and he does have a great nest egg, but it is 1/3 of what would have happened if you put it in an investment portfolio. This comes to what we talked about earlier, which is what is your risk tolerance? You know that better than anyone else. The great thing is that when you start young, you have time to see the corrections. The market does correct itself. Like I said, the past year to year and a half, we have seen a great amount of fluctuations. Unfortunately, some of them have really gone in the opposite direction that we wanted to. But historically, the market does correct itself. So the earlier you begin, the greater chance you have to survive the dips of the market. And there will be dips in the market. You want to be very aware of what's going on with your investment, whether it is a simple investment like a CD, your IRA, your 401k, 403b, but you do not want to, I really tell people don't check it every single day. I do check mine once a week just to make sure, unless I have seen something like a movement from the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve can cause a lot of highs and lows on that. Unfortunately, that is something that is outside of our control, but time does correct it. So I feel like we've gone over a lot here, and I hope I did not talk too fast, but there are some things just, and I just realized that I have not put my email up here, but my email is my first initial last name. So it's gcannady@legacycreditunion.com. If you have any questions, I will gladly answer them. I also do some one-on-ones if you just want to talk in a confidential manner, so I can do those. Do those with family members often, especially if you have 2 incomes or even more of that will play into a budget, and some other options there for some different types. Now it does say CUNA 401k training classes. I do apologize for that. That is my personal 401k. However, they have some great tools that applies to whatever your investment portfolio is, because it's just information about the different elements, especially of IRAs. So any questions?
Yeah, some great information, Gina. Thank you so much. So I'm going to start out, you mentioned about building credit, and there's good debt versus bad debt. Personal story, few months ago, I don't even remember how many now, my daughter needed a new car. So we took her out as a co-borrower on the loan, and that's helping her establish that credit. Doing things like that, perhaps if you're a student tuning in, and we have young alumni and students, but they can do that in the process to start building their credit, correct?
Oh, absolutely. And that's very common to see a parent or a guardian to be the co-borrow on it. What we do like to see is to have that as the co-borrower, and then have the student as the borrower or the primary. And that will have more impact on there. But it's also a great way to get the better rate as well, because you want to build it, but you don't want to be paying too much at the same time. So that's a great way to do auto loans. If you do have a credit card, just make sure that the people that you want to co-sign have good credit too.
Exactly. For everybody in the room, go ahead, toss those questions into the chat box. We will get to those. Got a question. So do banks provide interest to keep money there in the US like other countries, such as a saving account?
Absolutely. Those they are called interest. Sometimes the terminology is dividend. You might hear that, and that's simply to distinguish it from an interest rate that you would pay on a loan. But we do. All financial institutions pay simple interest on your savings account. If you have other types, if you have maybe, I know we talked before about a roundup savings, which is based on your debit card usage. That is something you would get paid interest on. You can get paid interest on many of your checking products. Make your financial institution compete for you on those interest-bearing checking accounts as well. So yes, you will definitely see that. It will not be as high as some riskier investments because they are guaranteed, but you will find that. And also know that whether it is a bank or credit union in the U.S., either through the FDIC or the NCUA, that you have a $250,000 insurance or governmental backing to make sure that those accounts are good.
And I know a lot of people, a lot of banks, financial institutions offer the roundup, and we have that, and it's great because it's just little money that now you have extra.
Mhm.
You don't really have extra, but it kind of seems like you do. With everything that you've talked about over the last 40 or so minutes, is there one thing that you can point to that will be more beneficial down the road for individuals than maybe the others?
That, and it's according if we're talking about savings or debt. For debt, it's to distinguish what is that good debt versus the bad, and know your debt tolerance. That is not something I can tell you exactly. It's this. Your debt tolerance is 38.9% because that is individual. Now, if it's something with savings, start early. The earlier you start, even if it's small, then the better it is over time because you can survive those highs and lows. And the power of time and compound interest is huge. It really is huge.
And somebody just threw in the chat a question that I think you might have just answered. If we already have a savings account, Roth IRA, retirement account, and brokerage, I think they're looking to elaborate on that. But is there one of those that might be better than the others? And it might depend on what you're comfortable with, what you just said.
It is. It's definitely going to depend on your risk tolerance on that one. And almost what are your goals? Is your goal to retire at 50? Well, then you might be a little more aggressive than that. But is your goal I'm going to retire at 62, but then I want to travel? Well, then you're going to talk. Ooh, they're complex. That's going to a little different. So it's going to depend on your goal. Time is the biggest thing. Regardless of the investment you have, time is going to be your biggest friend.
Obviously, you work for a particular financial institution in town, Legacy Credit Union. Do you encourage people to kind of shop around to see what the best fit is for them? Because they may not want to do a credit union. They may not want to do a bank. So there's a lot of options out there. How do you figure out what to do?
That one, you do your research, and how do you want to do your banking, for a better word. I work for a credit union, but credit union doesn't work. Do you need a bricks and mortar? Some people like knowing that there is one no matter where you go. Some others, do they have great digital options that I don't have to go in there and I can do everything on my phone or online in some way? So definitely do your research on that. Now, I know working for Legacy, I should say, oh, you should always go to Legacy, but we may not be the best fit. And if we're not a good fit or your bank's not a good fit, you're not going to stay anyway. So find what works for your lifestyle. And especially if you're a spousal or a family relationship, making sure that it works for everyone in your family. You know, if you are looking for somewhere that has, I don't know, report card rewards, make sure that you're keyword searching for report card rewards. Because that is a great way to teach your kids how not only to save, but to do great in school. So that can help you in the long run, save you some headache there at home. But what works for you?
Gotcha. And when it comes to financial institutions and where you have your money and things like that, is it okay to have multiple? You know, you might have the guys in the green, you might have Legacy, you might have the other person down the street. So you might have various accounts. Is that okay?
That's perfectly fine. I do. I know I work for one, but I have multiple accounts. And that is, different things work better. I have a credit card that has better, don't tell my boss, but that has better rewards because it's from another financial institution. So it works for me. I drive a lot. It gives me an excellent cash back for my gas consumption. So I need that. So absolutely fine. You might find this is the best checking account. I love this checking account, but the CD rate somewhere else, they gave me a better rate. That's okay. That is perfectly fine. You just want to make sure that your money is working for you.
Got it. And doubling back to the question that I kind of finished off that was only half composed, they finished it. And so if you already have a savings, a Roth IRA, and a brokerage account, is there anything else they should be looking for with those?
That one, so they have their Roth, the IRA, 401k, they're doing investments. Those things are also linked to time. They have some stiff penalties. Yes, you can access them, but they do have that penalty phase. So if you're wanting to make sure that you have something that you can get to quickly with little or no penalties, CDs, club accounts, savings accounts, something that you can access with, like I said, at the drop of a hat. Life happens quickly. What happens if you can't wait for that distribution from your IRA or your 401k? If you have another option, I would definitely make sure you have that other option.
And the last question that I have, unless something pops up in the chat, what about paying down debt apps like Tally? Are they safe to use? Are they effective?
They are safe to use. You always make sure, of course, that you have that security certificate for whatever app you're on. But they are a great tool to use, especially in the digital world, that simply helps you keep on track. And a lot of times that is the battle. Not that you don't want to pay your debt, but life is so fast. We have so many things going on. I need a little help saying, hey, you were supposed to have paid this today. And so I'm going to go ahead and pay it for you. So any type of tool you use that helps you keep track of your budget, keeps track of your debt, repay, that is a great tool to use.
Awesome. Gina, fantastic information as always. There's a wealth of information that you gave us. So thank you so much for spending the last 45 minutes, 50 minutes with us going over Budgeting 201.
Thank you so much for having me.
You are so welcome. And for everybody in the webinar room today, just a heads up, a recording will be made available on our website, maybe later today, but I'm going to say for sure by tomorrow. Just depends on the workload that I have. You can register for other upcoming Backpacks to Briefcases events to earn credit toward an Evergreen certificate on Thursday, April 28th. So tomorrow we will welcome the director of the UAB Career Center, Brandon Wright, for leveraging LinkedIn. Build your personal brand and network. That webinar is at 6:30. Then our spring Backpacks to Briefcases winds down with Gina's colleague, Leah Ragland, on Wednesday, May 4th. Join us at noon for I'm Home as we learn the do's and don'ts of first-time homeownership. On Wednesday, May 11th, don't miss another Lunch and Learn, Interview Skills. This is a rescheduled one that will feature Adam Roderick from Milo's Tea Company. And then on Thursday, May 19th, join us for Comedy, Just Say Yes. During this webinar, we'll discover how to develop our personal happiness plan with Dr. Kevin Fontaine. That one's not part of the Backpacks to Briefcases series, but it will be a fun one to tune into. You can find all of these at alumni.uab.edu/events. Let us help get you through your day or commute. Listening to the UAB Green and Toll podcast. New episodes are released every other week and feature members of the UAB community. Meet one of the first persons to put on a Blaze mascot uniform, meet an Army general, and discover why alumni chose their career paths. Download the podcast on Spotify and the Apple Podcast app, or just visit our website. And be sure to stay on top of everything's alumni on social media. You can look us up by searching UAB Alumni on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. On LinkedIn, search Alumni Career Community. We'd love to know what you thought about today's session. On your screen is a QR code to a short survey. Please just take a few moments to give us feedback and let us know your thoughts. Once again, thank you so much for joining us for today's discussion with Gina Cannady. Have a great afternoon and go Blazers.